Afternoon. Seeing that some of you are working awkward hours, it's going to be a bit challenging for us to meet at a specific time, the same time. So I thought, let me record and send you the recording. So today I want us to do the friction module. So the friction module I've shared the notes with you, and I've loaded the notes on Google Classroom, as well as the notes are available on what other platform? Yeah, no, they are available on Google Drive. Yes, if you can't access them, you can send me an email, then I'll forward them to you. In fact, you should all join Google Drive, because if you are at Google Classroom, because if you're all there, then I can email you easier. Okay, so the friction module as these topics. We first look at the important terms, then we look at principles, advantages, disadvantages, and ways of reducing friction. Then we look on friction on horizontal planes as well as friction on inclined planes. So I'm gonna do the first two topics on this video. Then I'll do a separate video on friction on horizontal planes and another video on friction on inclined planes. What are the important terms? First and foremost, you must be able to define friction. What is friction? Now, this is now just friction, not frictional force. Friction is the resistance between surfaces that are in contact. When surfaces come into contact with one another, there is a resistance, and that resistance is called friction. And frictional force is the force that opposes or resists motion or even possible motion. Then coefficient of friction is the ratio between the frictional force and the normal reaction force. When we look at friction on a horizontal plane, I will explain to you what a normal reaction force is. By the way, you should know from N2. We get two types of friction, static friction and kinetic friction. So static friction is the maximum friction taking place just before an object starts moving on the plane, whereas kinetic friction is the friction which takes place if an object slides across the bearing surface at a constant speed. Now, this is just further explanation of static friction and kinetic friction. And it explains that static friction is always greater than kinetic friction because it is easier to keep an object moving than it is to start its motion. And then what are the principles of friction? Friction depends on the nature of the surface. The smoother the surface, the less friction. The rougher the surface, the more friction we will experience. Friction does not depend on the speed. It also does not depend on the size of the area. How can we reduce friction? We can machine the contact surfaces to a smooth finish. We can add lubrication. We can also ensure that parts fit properly onto one another. What are the advantages of friction? Friction removes material. When we use sandpaper, for instance, friction enables us to walk on the floor. It brings moving machinery to a standstill. Friction between the tires of a car and the road enables forward movement. What are the disadvantages of friction? What is bad about friction? It causes wear and tear. It generates unwanted heat. It has a retarding effect on moving parts. It sort of opposes the motion. And due to friction, more power is required to maintain movement. And that is the theory we have around friction. Now, the next video is going to take us through friction on horizontal planes. Thank you.